Okay, it looks like some people have popped in here. Perfect. So welcome. This is the webinar for physical security for digitization projects. This is a BMI imaging systems webinar. I'm Will Whitney. I'm the executive vice president and the compliance officer on our security team. And with me today is Jim Modrell, our vice president of operations and also our security officer of the security team. Thank you for joining, Jim.
Good morning, Will. Thanks everyone for joining.
And we'll get right into it here. So the purpose of today's webinar is to clarify first physical versus digital security, because we are talking about specifically physical, although there's going to be some overlap. Highlight our security posture. We can't speak to how other people do all their special sauce of their security, but we can describe what we do so you have an idea of how we'd operate if we work together, and then give you a benchmark of what we think you should be looking for when you're researching a company to work with for digitization. So first, a little housekeeping. Could you please raise your hand in the Zoom panel so I know that you can hear me? All right, I see two people raise their hand. Perfect, thank you. That means it's working. And if you could unraise it and then raise it again, or if you didn't raise it the first time, if you can see my screen, which should say nuts and bolts and be the slideshow. And I see some raised hands. Thank you very much, I appreciate it. And you are muted and not on video, so don't have to worry about having your camera on, and you won't be able to speak either, but you can use the QA tool to ask any questions. Please ask them along the way. If we see them, we'll try to answer them as they come up, but if not, there's a little ending piece where we will answer any questions that we have not answered, or if you have any at the end. But feel free to ask them along the way, and I'll try to catch them as they come along. All right, now to the meat of it, security and digitization. So first, is it really that important? We think it is. Security of your physical records, we believe it definitely is important. However, it's up to you on the depth of security that you're comfortable with when you do a project. We can't control what you think is secure enough or not secure enough, but we definitely think it's important even for technically non-sensitive records, and since we're speaking about physical security here. Which records are affected? Really all of them on the physical side. If you're digitizing a collection of records, some documents, and you're working with a partner like us, like BMI, you're handing off those records. They may be one of a kind, even if there's something public information like newspapers. It may be the only copy you have, so you want to know that it's protected while it's out of your visibility. And then sort of this ties in that first question of, is it really important? How much weight should it hold? That's up to you again. We can't tell you what you should do. We can only recommend things, tell you what we do, and it's up to you to decide how much security should play into your project. And then physical versus digital. So I mentioned there's a little bit of overlap, because if you're doing a digitization project, of course, there's going to be electronic images and there's security related to that. But today we are specifically focusing on the physical side of receiving records, scanning them, and the protection around that. Jim, before I move on, anything on this slide that you'd like to add?
No, I think you've covered it pretty well. There's not much point in securing all the digital images and putting a lot of security on that if anybody could just walk off with a box of paper. So, yeah.
Agreed.
Physical security precedes everything else.
Excellent. Let's move to the next one here. So material security classification levels it's our term for the different types of security methods within our operations based on your material's content. And we'll go through each of those. So level 1, that's the lowest level of security, and it's public information. So I mentioned newspapers earlier. So if you have something that's public information, can be accessed theoretically anywhere, there's no sensitive information, there are no restrictions to get to it, that's what we consider level 1. Basic level of security. Level 2 would be private information, so things such as like company invoices. If you're doing your financial department's doing a scanning project and they have invoices with information about your customers and companies you're working with, it's not public information, but it's not level 3, which we'll get to in a second, which is sensitive in the sense of Jim's date of birth, home address, and social security number. That's a different type. So it's still private, but it's not that next level security. Level 3 is really the kind of switching into high gear is a different method of securing the data. When we get to level 3 secure, which is PII, personally identifiable information, records revolving like student records, medical records, things of that sort that will have that personal information that is very sensitive and very confidential. So that is a big delineation between level 2 and level 3. And we deal with these projects in different ways based on their level. It's kind of a tie on to level 3 because it's sensitive information, but it's level 3 CJIS, which stands for Criminal Justice Information Services, which is a department or division within the FBI. And so if you have criminal justice information like police records or criminal court records, anything with criminal data, that requires you to follow the the FBI security policy. So that's even within level 3, a different type of record that we have to process differently because of the nature of the data. And then lastly, we've only actually, I believe, Jim, we've only used this once, level 4 secret, which is the kind of Cadillac version of security. And it was for a federal agency. And it is just, it's a magnitude of difference beyond all the other levels of what has to be done to protect the data, not just physically, but also digitally. Anything on to add on the security classification levels, Jim?
No, that breaks it down pretty well. Yeah, secure. One thing I would add is when you hit level 3 secure, you typically have some federal and or state regulations involved in how the data is handled and how it's secured. Will had mentioned student records. So student records would fall under FERPA. And then healthcare claims information, that would fall under HIPAA. So there are other standards that start to be applied at level 3.
Yep. And when I mentioned that we process projects differently, you wouldn't want you to think that, oh, yeah, level 1 records, you're not going to really pay attention to it. That's not the case. We're still protecting all the data and all the records inside our facility and how we process them. It's just what's required at each level. Because once you go from level 2 to level 3, different tracking mechanisms need to be in place, different segmentation of the physical records and the data itself once it's in a digital format. These all tie in. So that's why there are different levels, because we can't just process everything the exact same way. We're not able to do that based on our operations. And a quick facility overview. We actually have 2 facilities. They're both roughly 17,000 square feet. And again, just ties into the physical part. One's in Sunnyvale, California, which is kind of bottom tip of the San Francisco bunny ears and just above San Jose, if you're familiar with California, so Silicon Valley. The other one's in Sacramento. It's about 10, 15 minutes from downtown. They're both constructed of reinforced concrete, so sturdy. I think they were built back in the 80s, but very kind of standard business park, heavy material, reinforced concrete facilities. In the production area specifically, there are no windows. We do have windows that you'll see later in the front in the sort of lobby area, the non-segmented area, but there are no windows in the production portions of either facility. We do have fire suppression systems, so if there is an incident, we can put out any fire, which is not good for physical materials. Critically, they're both freestanding and owner-occupied single-tenant facilities. We are not sharing them with other agencies or organizations. They are BMI facilities. We are the only tenant in them, and they are freestanding. So there are no shared doors or hallways or anything of that sort, gates, garages, whatever. These are BMI facilities, single tenant. And they both have a common access control system to, well, Jim, why don't you describe this one actually, how this ties into security?
Yeah, we use an electronic access control system. Every employee is issued a badge, and we'll go over this later, but we have a common access control system that's tied to all of the BMI facilities, so that we're auditing in real time employees coming into the facility, leaving the facility. All of that's logged. Employees moving into secure areas within the facility, what materials are around. So but it's all tied together into one system so that there's no latency and duplication of records or moving permissions from one facility to the other.
Excellent, thank you. And they are both equipped with and monitored with fire and intrusion detection systems. So if there's a fire, the local fire departments are notified. They get there as quick as they can. Intrusion detection, we have a security, like a third party that monitors our intrusion system. So if something happens or there's even the a kind of sniff of an incident, they notify us that we can go check on the facilities and make sure that nothing is out of place. Actually, recently, we had something that was not an incident, but I actually got a call about 2 a.m. from that third party saying, basically trying to notify us, hey, we see something that's a little out of place. It turns out it's just one of our employees typed in the wrong code to get in a couple times. So it just flagged the system. We were notified. Jim was actually there at about 3 a.m. and checked, all was well. But that's the type of security we have, that we are notified immediately when something is out of place, so we can check on and verify that everything is safe and secure. And then we have glass break detectors. So if someone does try to break in through one of the windows that are in the lobby areas, there's a decibel system that will allow us to that agency to let us know, hey, there's a loud crash or a loud break that is past the decibel level that we have in the threshold, and we let you know it may be a break-in. So first, now we're getting the actual kind of different pieces of the physical security, which is camera and video monitoring. I'll show you a few pictures here and we'll talk about it. Here are a couple cameras focused on different parts of the exterior of our Sunnyvale building. There's another one from a different angle. And there's one of the windows that's in the front non-production lobby area. And here's one that's in the interior of the building. What we want to point out is that we have cameras at every single entrance/exit to the facility. That's the critical part of when people come in or leave. We want to be able to see those access points and record who is going in and out. We do have so the exterior cameras capture that. Also, interior cameras capture those same points, just from a different angle from the inside. And there are other ones like this that capture just key points within the building. Our cameras are not in place in every single room and every nook and cranny to watch employees or watch every space of the building. We are focused on entrances and exits and key areas. This is actually a high traffic area right here. There's a long hallway and there's another one going left to right. We want to monitor those main traffic areas and any entry points. What else on the cameras, Jim?
Oh, well, we have cameras that are monitoring. In addition to the exterior doors, we have cameras that monitor the doors to all secure areas within the facility as well. Not this camera just monitors the hallway, but there's also doors into secure scanning rooms, secure material storage, server rooms, things like that. All of those doors are equipped with video cameras as well. So it's all recorded.
And we also you mentioned recorded again, and we do keep the recordings for a predetermined amount of time. That is based on, for one, we want to be able to go back and see. It's not forever, but we do keep it based on a certain amount of time, so we can check on previous incidents or recordings and check who was going in and out of area. If there was an incident at all, we can always verify that. Now, employee entry protocols, Jim did touch on it earlier with the common access controls. But at every single entry point into the building, there will be one of these, which is a keypad. The point about this is that every employee, every BMI employee will have a PIN code that's unique to them that they will use to get in the building, but not just the PIN code, they also have an ID badge. That is our form of two-factor authentication for physical entry into the building. So if they, let's say, lose their badge, someone can't just pick it up, say, hey, BMI imaging, walk up to the building, scan, and get in. They would also need to know the PIN code. Or if for some reason the employee somehow loses their PIN code or someone learns it, that person can't just type a PIN code and get in. They have to type the PIN code and scan the badge to get into the building. And this is all of the 4 doors into our facilities, or the Sunnyvale facility specifically. I think there are 1, 2, 3 at the Sacramento facility.
That's correct.
And here's another angle. This is the long way of our parking lot area, the back, and this is actually the side, I mean. And here's another one of the doors. You can see no windows along here, very low key, low profile. And there's a little pin code scanner right there as well, as there are on the other 2 buildings, doors in the back. There are other pieces to interior entry. I'll get into that in a second. Now, visitor procedures, of course, we do have visitors. It's not, we don't really run a sort of walk-in business that maybe decades ago, more people do that, but nowadays it's pretty much people are contacting us through the internet or the phone, and they send us their materials or we pick it up. But occasionally people do come to the facility. So if there are visitors, maybe a soon-to-be client, and they want to check out how everything works, they can come to the building. So here's the front of our Sunnyvale headquarters. And there, the door code's there. So there's some cameras here watching the entrance from the outside as well as the inside. Visitors are required to go to the front to check in when they come to the building. This is not our actual desk, but this is what happens. They walk in, they will provide their information, we'll take it down. We'll also take, if they're going to go into the production area, we're going to take note and write down the information on a government issued ID. So name, if they drove, we'll take a driver's license number and we'll confirm that they are the person they say they are. This is all captured on camera as well, so we can always verify that it was done. So they will check in, they will provide ID, and then they're allowed to be in the production area. Now, a key part of the production area is that we do have lobby areas and then we do have production areas. The lobby is a non-escort required portion of the facility because there is no material up there, production operations going on in the front. It's admin offices, sales offices, things of that sort, conference rooms. But to go into the production area, there are other entry protocols that employees would need to use to get in there. So in this case, it's not another PIN code, but the badge is needed to get into the production area for any employee. If a visitor is at the facility, they're required to have a BMI employee escort them at all times. They are not allowed to be in the production area without a BMI escort. Jim, any additions to any other visitor procedures that you
well, cell phones are not allowed in the production area, so visitors have to leave their cell phones in the custody of somebody in the front office when they go back there.
Sorry about that. I guess that's the FEMA test that just went off.
Yeah,
I believe everyone must be getting I'm sure they're all getting the emergency right now too. But yeah, just if you didn't hear it, Jim would say cell phones not allowed in the back. We don't want people taking pictures of items or anything of that sort. So cell phones are not allowed in the production area. Unless, as Jim mentioned, there's specific authorization from the security officer. An example of that would be like our project managers or VP of software who is constantly getting client calls, but his office is in the production area rather than in the admin area in the front. But that requires specific permission from Jim. Speaking on that sort of layers of the building, facility compartmentalization. It's kind of like an onion. You have the building as a whole is the outer layer of the onion. To get into that, you need the PIN code, you need a badge, or we have to let you in. Then within that, you can't get into the production area from the lobby area unless you have that badge to get in, or someone from the inside lets you in. That's that second layer. Even within that second layer, you get into the production area, there are other rooms that also require badging. In this case is our microfilm scanning room. And depending on projects, we can segment off those specific rooms. So even employees cannot get in them unless they have been designated to work on a certain project. It's not common that we do that. It's just for certain projects, some clients or for their materials, it requires that. So we can segment off individual rooms to protect the data or to run the processes and operations based on the requirements of our clients. Here's an example of just another room within the building's the paper scanning room. Actually, it's Sunnyvale facility. You're looking in from a door. There's a door here. We can lock those in. seal that area for certain projects if need be. This is actually, here's a door that goes to the lobby. So that's one of the doors you have to have a badge to get through. This is our operations center. There's quality checking going on here. There's data entry. Some project managers and plant managers are in this area. And then this is just a quick picture of someone doing density checks for microfilm. This is actually within the microfilm prep room. So you saw the microfilm scanning room, which can be segmented off. We would also seal off the prep room because it's the same material that's being worked on. So it's not just the scanning. Hey, you're scanning it, close that room off. You're also closing off where the material is being prepped because it's still the same content, still the same material, needs to be protected based on the scope of the project. And here's not the best picture, but an entry to the server room. Oops, sorry, which goes to our data center, our Sunnyvale data center. And that's actually, I believe, besides the interior room of the vault, it's sort of the pearl of the onion, where you get to get in the building, then in the production area, then into the restricted storage area, and then into the server area. So very few people are allowed to have access to this room because there's a big part of our organization is hosting client material. So we don't want even employees, just any employee, going into various rooms. We want to lock it down to specific individuals that need to be in there. Would you add anything to that, Jim, or is that?
No, that's correct. It's at each level as you go into the facility, deeper into the facility, the restrictions are higher and it's more heavily monitored. And there's you have to have a clear need for access and demonstrate that as a part of your normal work function to be able to access it. So, yeah.
And our speaking of server centers, we do have a co-location server center up near our Sacramento facility. That's at a I don't know the exact way to describe them, but a data hosting center called, well, it's NTT Data Centers, used to be called Raging Wire, but they have quite their own security posture as well. But we do have 2 locations. So even though it's data, it's hosting, physical security for your digital data. If something happened to our Sunnyvale facility, material would be at that data center, you still be able to access it. So even for digital information, we have physical ways of protecting your data and records. The restricted vault and storage, we just talked about the restricted, actually both areas, but here's some other images related to it. So this is, you can see this is the restricted storage, the third, I think it'll be the third level of the onion. There's a badging process to get into that room. And then that's where the server center is as well. You get through the restricted area, and then there's another door to server area. This is our vault. And what you see here is the doors open. This is the main vault door that requires a code to get in. And what we call this is the day gate, because every morning we come in, we open it, because that's where we store our microfilm and microfiche for projects. Our project managers and employees need to get in and out to get the materials to actually prep it, scan it, and work on it. So we have the day gate, so they don't have to enter the code, open the giant steel door. They still have to badge in, though. Again, it's restricted to certain employees that should be able to get in there. And once you're inside that area, actually, I'll show you that you can see it from here. This, what we're about to look at, is this cage against the wall. And this, when we first used it, was specifically for that level 4 project that they wanted, our client wanted their records, even inside all those layers, even inside the vault, in their own cage, separated from all their material. So no other material would go in, mix in with their records. So it was locked in here, and actually to even transport it within our own building from this cage to the scanning area, which would then be sealed off, we had a movable cage that an employee would go in, unlock this, put the materials in the movable cage, lock that, lock this up again, roll it through the hallways, get to the scanning area, work on it in there, and then have to move it back in the lock cage. So there are many different ways to do projects. That was the highest level security we had to do on a project, at least to my knowledge. And it adds a few more steps, but some records require it. And this is actually our Sacramento facility. This is in the warehouse area. And these cages were installed because we do a lot of work. Sacramento is purely paper records, but we do a lot of work on sensitive paper records. So we installed these cages that actually go a little bit more. If you follow my mouse to the right, I forget how many boxes we can actually store there, Jim, but this is sensitive material that needs to be segmented and locked away so not anyone can just get to it. So we created these so that when we're not working on the project, they can be stored securely. What did you add to this part, Jim?
No, it all goes to controlling who has access to your materials while they're in our custody, and that kind of goes to we maintain when we hit level 3. One of the extra things that happens is that we maintain a chain of custody record for each box of material. So who was handling it, who was prepping it, who scanned it, who moved it out of the warehouse, who moved it into the warehouse, etc. So that's just another level of tracking.
Mm-hmm. Now, since I mentioned a few times that customer that was the level 4, or at least what we now call level 4, at the time, it was actually before I was even at the company, but it was sort of I don't want to say a struggle, but it was kind of a pain to get it going, get their requirements. Jim led the charge on this, but it was actually sort of a blessing in disguise because that was, I don't know, almost 15 years ago or so. And that really kicked us into high gear, which then just changed our mindset a bit on how we operate. And just now, since then, we have constantly been upgrading our technology around security, upgrading our physical security, and always looking for ways to better ourselves for that, because, and it was just sort of ahead of its time what they required. Many folks didn't start doing what we're doing until maybe 5 years ago, but we were already ahead of it because this client required it. So it was difficult at the time, didn't make a ton of sense to us because it was just a different way of operating, even though we worked on records, since we've been around since 65. So we've done a lot of record management, but it just helped us get into that mindset of very high level security. Now that things are just so moving in the direction of digital and just everything around that and protecting the records and data, it really helped us get going to where we are today. Now, end-to-end material security, it's not just necessarily when it gets to us, your records, it's also how it gets to us. Now, this is Bernard. He's our warehouse manager, but also one of our drivers. This is the back area of our Sunnyvale facility. There's another one of our doors, and you can see the keypad there. And if we're working with you and we're going to pick up the records, it'll be Bernard or one of our other drivers that go to help out and load the records, load the boxes and whatnot into our vehicles, which is shown here. Here's one of them of our small fleet, and it's an unmarked vehicle. We don't like to advertise necessarily that we're a document management company. We may be carrying around sensitive materials. So it's going to be an unmarked vehicle with one of our employees picking it up. And on that vehicle, we do have locks. So when they're not at the vehicle, it's locked, it's not open. So it's not going to be just left open while they go down the stairs to pick up some boxes and bring them up. They'll be locked so the records are protected while within the vehicle. And anything else on I feel like I'm missing something on the vans, Jim.
Well, we also have GPS tracking on all the vans, real-time tracking. So we monitor in real time the position of every van with the client material. So
that's right. I knew I was forgetting something.
Yeah.
Now, if we don't pick up your records and you need to ship them to us, because there's a lot of our clients are nationwide now. It's not just regional or local. There's an additional piece of security that we can provide to you if it's something you're interested in. Typically, this will really be for mostly microfilm, microfiche, Aptra cards, hard drives, maybe if you're sending a bunch of those for us to do a data migration or something of that sort. But these are smaller cases and they're called Pelican cases. The military uses them a lot. Very durable. They're waterproof, I think chemical proof, air, basically they're protecting anything inside of it from being affected by whatever's around it. Additionally, you can see these locks on here. So what we would do, and here's an example inside, padding, we actually cut those depending on the materials that go in so it fits it well and packs in there nice and tightly. But what we can do is actually send you one of these or batches of them. We would put the locks inside with the key for those specific locks. You'd receive it, put your materials in there, lock it up, hold on to the key, and then put that inside of a shipping container, shipping box, and get it back to us. So when we receive it, we have the key to open the locks. this does not prevent every sort of incident that could happen during shipping, but it does help mitigate tampering or maybe water damage from leakage or something of that sort. So you can never eliminate all risk, but it's just another step of, well, I don't necessarily want to send my my criminal record microfiche to you in just a FedEx box. Okay, we can provide this. So you have that extra level of security even in shipping. Any additions, Jim? Did I miss anything there?
No, what we found, we actually used this methodology with the government job that Will was referring to, and yeah, they were perfectly comfortable with this methodology to transport their film. It was microfilm, out to our location and back, and it worked very well, actually.
Yeah, we typically, if it's a small project, you may get all of it to us in just one container. Occasionally we maybe send you 3 and you fill up 3 at a time, send it to us. We unload them in our facility, start working on it, send you the empty ones back, and we keep just doing batches back and forth depending on the size of your project. But they have come in useful. We used to have different types of cases, but we found Pelican cases to be the ones that we prefer for the time being. They're just very durable. Now, verifying
one anecdote there,
yes,
Will. During that conversion process, we found out that FedEx always knows the location of your material, your shipment. They know 100% of the time, while UPS sometimes doesn't know. So we always use FedEx.
We can't condone one or the other or give legal advice to anyone, but
yeah,
thank you for the anecdote, Jim.
Sorry.
Verifying security. So this is all great. Everything we're saying, I'm sure you're thinking, oh, that's fantastic. But how do you know we're telling the truth? We always say, don't just trust us, find a way to verify it. Now, how do you do that? Certifications and attestations, such as we mentioned criminal justice information services, that FBI division relating to criminal justice information and their security policy. Is if you have criminal records, is the company working with CJIS listed? Can't just say CJIS compliant, because you could look at the security policy, say, yeah, I'm CJIS compliant. Well, BMI is actually a CJIS listed entity, so you can find and say, yes, they have been listed as someone that can handle this material. Maybe I'm describing it wrong, Jim, but if you could put some color on that, maybe.
Part of being complying with CJIS standards is that every employee that may come in contact with CJIS material has to take a test and be CJIS certified. So if you're just CJIS compliant, you're not in their system. You can't take those tests. So you say you're CJIS compliant, but if you don't have certified employees, you're not.
It was actually this was one of those, we didn't plan it. We were working with a client, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, and they mentioned it because they had to verify that we were doing. So it was kind of like we couldn't just do it ourselves. We had to be working with a client that more or less put us into the process, I believe.
Yeah, you can't go out and just sign up for it. A client has to, or somebody who is in the CJIS system has to list you as a vendor, and then you get access to all of the training and the certifications. So
that's one way to check it. Again, especially if you're working in criminal information, that's one thing to look for. Do they run an internal audit? And yes, the things we're going to list are definitely things we do. That's why we're listing them, because we know how we do our security. But an internal audit is proof that we're checking things that we say we're doing. Now, again, can you verify if you're saying, yes, I got 100% on my own test? Well, you can at least look at, well, what are you checking? Can I see the reports on that? Now, Jim and I are part of the security team. There are a number of other folks on that. And every year we run an internal security audit. It started, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, before I was at BMI. It started actually for a specific,
20 years ago. Yeah.
A specific client that was in healthcare that asked us to verify how we were securing their records during claims processing. So it was actually specifically for one client that said, I want you to tell me this stuff every year and show me how you're protecting my data, it eventually just evolved into, well, we should just kind of cover all our security and our processes and making sure we're doing things properly. And that's what it evolved into. So it's not even based around the healthcare claims process anymore. It just turned into security, which will lead into another piece we're about to talk about, an external audit. So we do this every year. There are 44, 45 individual tasks related to topics like privacy, personnel, local access controls, physical security, like disaster recovery tasks. So just multiple pieces of an overall security puzzle that we check and verify every year. And what I feel like there's something, what else about that? Oh, now I remember. Let's say there's a task. Jim usually has 10, 15 tasks. I have 6, 7, 8. If I check a task to verify, yeah, we're doing this, I can't just say we're doing it, we're good. I have to go verify it within the audit period that we designate. And then I have to provide supporting documentation to prove that we're doing what we say we're doing. And then a different person within the security team has to verify that I did it and I showed I showed proof that actually does prove what I. So kind of complicated, but it's not just Jim saying, yeah, I did my task, they're done. Usually it'll be, hey, Will, I need you to verify that I did this. Then I have to go and check what he did and make sure, yeah, you got it. From what we can see, this is proper. We're doing everything as we say we are. And then once it's all done, we just wrapped it up a couple of weeks ago. We provide a report to the CEO so he can review it. And then this is something that can be provided to clients or future clients as a report so they can see what we're doing on our internal audit and check our security as well. HIPAA self-certified. The reason we say self-certified because HIPAA doesn't have just a test to say, yes, you're certified. It's more guidelines. There are HIPAA policies and procedures and whatnot, but there's no just single test that says you are HIPAA, like the CGIS one. So we do follow the guidelines of HIPAA. Jim, as part of our security, our internal audit, checks the HIPAA regulations every year to make sure we're still complying with what is deemed is provided from HIPAA, saying you should be following these various things. But there's no single test that says you pass. So based on how we read it and what we're doing, we attest that we are HIPAA self-certified. Is good enough explanation, Jim?
Yeah, that covers it. There isn't really a certification for HIPAA, but yeah, you have to be HIPAA compliant. You have to follow all of these guidelines and be able to prove that you are. And as you pointed out, that's how our internal audit started out. Mm-hmm. And then it grew from there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now, the internal audit was fun, but then we actually started 4 years ago, I think it was, the SOC 2 audit. So again, just as many of these things happen, we sort of looked into it in the past and thought, I don't know if it's, we'd be ready for it or if we can really get to that level. But maybe 5 years ago, we were working with a client that they were being SOC 2 Type 2 audited. And the auditor, because we were working with them, actually had to come to our facility to check that we were doing what we were doing for that client. And he mentioned, you guys are actually probably about 85% of the way there. So we thought, this could be good. We should try this. So we started with the SOC 2 Type 1 audit, which is a little less stringent. It's more you're providing documentation, processes, and whatnot. But then 4 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, we did our first SOC 2 Type 2 audit where there's on-site auditing, much more poking around the weeds by auditors saying, show me exactly what you're doing. I need to see that. It's not just you saying, yes, I'm doing this. Here's some documentation. They're watching you verify, saying, I need to see specific documents, specific executions of processes, and so on and so forth. So we've been doing that for about, I think we just finished our 4th one, Jim.
The first year is a Type 1 audit, which checks to verify that you've got all the correct controls in place. Yeah. And then the Type 2 audit is proof that you've continued to use all the controls after the auditor left. So yes. It's
critical. It's a third party. It's not, this isn't me and Jim saying, hey, we're this. It's a third party, unbiased observer or observers of an entity saying, okay, you are doing, I think it's like 80 to 100 or so different items that they're checking. And in addition to, it's not just the company, they have different auditors come. So we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 different sets of eyes. So every, I think 2 years at least, they rotate. So it's not the same person coming back all 4 times. It's, they send different people, so they catch different things, or they see different things that we're doing, and they may have different levels of expertise in various areas. So that's what we want. We don't want them to come in and say, great, you're perfect. We want to say, hey, this is good, but here's where you could improve something. Or, you know, I saw this, that's a gap you should be filling. So that's what we want. And they always find something, which is, we think is good because it helps us improve. But the key is it's an unbiased third party saying we are doing what we're doing. It's not just us saying it.
One of
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to, well, you just put it up. I was going to say that the SOC framework is they're testing to the NIST SP 853 Control 171 specs. So that's the basis for it.
And then the NIST was the National Institute and Standards of Technology. That was, I think that came into play when we were working with that federal agency. That kind of was the baseline of what we need to get in place to be able to do the project with them. So that was what really kicked off a lot of our higher tier security that we just do as normal procedures nowadays, was that NIST compliant procedure, or putting those controls in place to do the job with that client. And that just kind of streamlined everything else. So when you're verifying security with an agency that you may want to work with, just ask them about these things. If you have criminal records, ask if their CISA listed. How do they verify they're HIPAA compliant, HIPAA self-certified? Do they have any external audits? Do they do an internal audit? These are all things you can ask them. Like we said in the beginning, it's up to you what your comfort level is. If they say they don't do any of this and you're okay with that, that's your choice. If they do 4 of the 5 of these, but they don't do the 5th, and you're not comfortable working with them unless they do that 5th, then you want that just higher tier. It's really up to you what your comfort level is for your records. Now that actually wraps it up. Anything else before we get into questions, Jim? Any last tidbits that kind of came to your mind before we see if there's any questions?
Well, the only thing that I would say is that we've been actively working on security since 2001, 2002. And it's not easy. It's not, you know, it's not just something you say, okay, we're going to do security. It takes years to actually weave the security into the fabric of the organization, so that it's kind of first of mind. First, everybody out there, all of our production people, it's kind of the first thing that comes to their mind is security, and then the task. So that's and that takes a while.
No, appreciate it. Yeah, it's not something you just flip a switch on. It's taken a long time to get to where we are. You can see how different times these things layered on top of each other. So hard to replicate. We're glad we started it when we did, or just luckily we had clients that also required things, and we just kind of started doing it because our clients needed it. That's just another way we work with folks. Sometimes they need something and we work with them to get there. So we're happy about it. Our security is very important to us. We hope it's important to you. But this concludes the physical security. I'm going to see if there are any questions. If you had written some, I'll check. If you have some right now, feel free to pop them in there. Let me check real quick. I don't see any sitting there waiting for me at the moment. So as I can kind of wrap it up here, if you do have one, just fire away and we'll see if I can answer it before I close out. But if not, if you're interested in a project or anything about security related to digitization, feel free to reach out to us. This is the easiest way just to get directly to me. That's the easy email, the quicker one, Will at BMI Imaging. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can just hold your phone up, scan the QR code. It'll take you to our subscribe page. Every other week you get a newsletter about new articles, new videos that are out, webinars that are coming up, things of that sort. So feel free to sign up if you're interested in kind of hearing more about topics related to this. Otherwise, we appreciate you joining. Thank you. And we hope you got something out of it. Thank you, Jim, for being my co-host here. I appreciate that as well.
Quite welcome, Will. And thanks to everyone for joining us.
All righty, folks. Have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.